Good. Good morning or good evening. I'm Father Gerry Steinmetz, Gerald, in Spanish, Gerardo. In Cincinnati, August 16th, 1965, I professed my first profession as a Franciscan. And 50 years later, here in New Mexico, in Albuquerque, I celebrated 50 years that God had given me as a Franciscan and a priest for 44 years. I decided that I needed to celebrate those 50 years. It's a Jubilee year in the Bible. Every 50 years was to give back everything to the original owners. And it was also a time of pilgrimage. And so I decided that I wanted to make a pilgrimage. And it also coincided with Pope Francis' year of grace and mercy that he called for, and which was 50 years after the close of the Second Vatican Council. Pope Francis, in inaugurating and talking about that pilgrimage, that holy year, the year of grace, he said that the practice of pilgrimage has a special place in the holy year because it represents the journey each of us makes in this life. Life itself is a pilgrimage, he says, and the human being is a pilgrim, traveling along the road, making his way to the desired destination. Then he writes, may everyone, each according to his or her ability, will have to make a pilgrimage. This will be a sign that mercy is also a goal to reach and requires dedication and sacrifice. May pilgrimage be an impetus to conversion. By crossing the threshold of the holy door, we will find the strength to embrace God's mercy and dedicate ourselves to being merciful with others as the Father has been with us. That's from his 14th chapter of the Face of Mercy. And I also read, as I began my pilgrimage in the 1st of November 2015, that the pilgrimage is not the goal of the journey, but rather what you learn on the way. I began my pilgrimage at the invitation of Friar Gabriel Romero in Mexico, the provincial of San Felipe province. Actually, as a result of our friendship that we developed in Colombia at a Justice and Peace International Conference, he invited me to come to Mexico to see his people, his friars, and especially to go up into the mountains of Chiapas. We had hoped to do that right away when I got down there, but he was called to a meeting by the Minister Provincial, General in Mexico. So he, after I got to Cancun, Mexico, and met him, then he had Brother Cecilio take me on bus to Ismael, which is their provincial headquarters. It's in Yucatan, and it's a beautiful old, very old church and buildings there in Yucatan. However, when I got there, arrived in Cancun, I got off the plane and I couldn't get my phone to work, and he was in another part of the airport trying to find me. We didn't hook up with each other right away, and he went away frustrated, and I, at the end of the evening, went to a hotel. The next morning I went to Mass on Sunday. After Mass I went to the sacristan, and he got me to the Franciscans there in Cancun, where they lived. he got someone to take me there. It was like many times on my journey, angels appeared and took care of me and protected me and guided me along. I would spend a day or maybe only a night there at Ismael, and Brother Cecilio and Father Antonio drove me 8 hours to the Casa de Migrantes 72. This is the house of migrants there at Tenosique on the border of Guatemala and Mexico. There were over 200 men, women, and children there. I spent about a week there talking to them, interviewing, seeing what was being done by Father Tomas and Aurelio. And it was a beautiful experience, but a very challenging one. Each day the people were fed, the men, by what Father Aurelio could get from the merchants in town, maybe carrots and tomatoes and things that were left over, and they just put it in a pot and whatever, along with rice and things that they bought. But that was the picture of a little boy there, and his beautiful little face with his, he had just received his bowl of rice and whatever there was, soup or whatever. And there was a great hunger, and there was also a great amount of love and compassion. This Casa 72 remembers 72 migrants who were murdered or killed, assassinated. And in the little chapel they had a Way of the Cross depicting some of the things that migrants have been meeting. And they then directed the migrants, they gave them a little booklet of their rights as migrants, and also how they might make their way up through Mexico. They called it the Way of the Cross and one. And those who migrate, they had papers for the people, and did medical work for them. They helped them to rest. Some of them needed clothing or shoes. They came, sometimes they had been robbed before they got there. But they were all running away mainly from Honduras, from people who were threatening to kill them, teenagers. And they came through Guatemala and sometimes were beat up and raped and robbed along the way. And then they rested, and some of them were making their way to the United States, if possible. I stayed there, and then I journeyed on to San Cristobal for a little bit. I saw the shrine, the tomb of the great bishop there, who offered a lot to the people for 40 years. And then I went on to Guatemala. I got into Guatemala and was met by Brother Miguel Castro, and just welcomed me. All the friars were so welcoming in this pilgrimage. I felt like a Franciscan. I felt like a brother. I was welcomed as a part of their family. Doesn't matter where I came from, I was welcomed. There I made arrangements to fly to Lima, and I got to Lima, and with the motive of spending 2 months in Peru, and most of all getting to the jungle of Peru where I had worked for 11 years. I flew into Pucallpa, and I visited with some people. One of my dear friends who had helped me a great deal had just died a few weeks before that. So I was there with her family. And then I got on boats and went down river. Speedboat, got on at 8 o'clock in the morning, and by 12:30 I was part way down the river. I ate a quick lunch, got on another boat, and I got to Oriana that evening, and met Father Pepo and Brother Tirso. And brother is from Mexico, and a young guy, and Pepo is from Argentina. Pepo loves to cook, and he prepared a great fiesta for me. But what interested me was that they, each morning, Monday through Friday, would have an hour program with this gentleman up in a little place up in the hill there, where this guy had a computer and had facilities to broadcast through radio for an hour. So Tirso and Peppo, they would go there, and they invited me to go along. And so I was able to talk to some of the people that I was going to visit downriver. So I got downriver to Tierra Blanca, where I'd been 11 years. Father Wilfredo was there, a diocesan priest, and the sisters, 3 sisters of the Nativity. I stayed there a few days then also, and made my way down to Juancito for Christmas. And Juancito here, we celebrated in a very simple way. And this lady here is Mirza. She has intense arthritis. But this young man brought her through the mud and through the streets from her house to the celebrations. A wonderful young man. And the teacher there, Ricardo, is heading up, coordinating the community work there. And during that time, we celebrated Christmas, and we had a wonderful time on Christmas Day. The young people, a group of people, had prepared dances and things like that. And the ladies prepared bread and hot chocolate for the children. That was a real treat for the children, very simple way. I celebrated Mass with them, and after Christmas, I got on the boat and was in a hammock for 2 days. I spent 2 days on a beautiful hammock, and the colors are the colors of the jungle there, and so it was kind of beautiful to lay there for 2 days. But 2 days, sometimes you say that takes a long time, but you just don't lie in the hammock. You also talk with people. I had a chance in Juancito and Tierra Blanca to talk with people I had worked with and met with. And I made my way back to Pucallpa, and that was 2 days going upriver. There, happily, I met my old friend who helped me to build many churches with the people, little chapels in their villages. Lucho Fatama. I was told at first that he had died in an accident of construction, but here we were able to make a visit with him and have several evenings with him. And the man who did that for me was Manuel Manuco, who had been on captain on our boat. So I spent some time there in Pucallpa, and these are pictures of some of the people I met in Tierra Blanca. They all wanted to have a picture with me. I came back then to Lima and arranged to go up to Cusco to again visit that sacred land. I was able to make arrangements with an old friend who then got me to Machu Picchu, and I spent a day there, evening and a day, and came back on the train. And of course, that's a sacred land and beautiful land of the Incas and their temples and their formations. So I spent some time there. Also, I went up to a monastery up in the mountains that the Franciscans have, Ocopa. And this is where the Franciscans trained young Franciscans to go into the jungle as missionaries. And so it's a very special place, and it still is operating. And I was able to also see some of the area again, the potato fields, the beautiful shrine of Our Lady of a statue that's probably as tall as the Statue of Liberty. Mario Brown, a Franciscan, took me around along with a teacher of his friend Freddie. So again, there was a great Franciscan connection. I saw the llamas, I saw the Incas, their rock formations and things like that. Came back to Peru, to Lima, and stayed about a week with the friars there too, and reconnected with some of the friars, Mauro and Edel, and Rocky and Severino, and the whole group, and that was wonderful. After my visit in Lima, I flew into Guatemala again and made my way down to El Salvador for 2 weeks. There I met again those Hill and others who are working with young people in the small communities outside of San Salvador. We call it Apredeni. They call it Apredeni. And they gave me the Association for the Promotion of the Human Rights of the Children in El Salvador. And this hat they gave me, and then along with some other things, but I was able to see the projects that they were promoting, like a bakery that the young people, teenagers, could work at and therefore have some income and not have to sell drugs. This project is promoted and supported by people here in Albuquerque. So I saw the bakery in operation in a small little building with a little oven with pans and also bicycles where they would take the bread out in the afternoon and sell it with on baskets on front of their bicycles. So they are promoting that, along with promoting these young people, teenagers, to be leaders. They initiated a program where they bring them in and give them a stipend, 8 young men and women, and they train them and work with them, and then they do projects, and then they evaluate how did that go. So they're trying to counteract the threats of drug cartels and people who are threatening these teenagers. So it's kind of like offer something else to them and for them. So I stayed there 2 weeks, and I got acquainted very well with the young people, and that was a great delight. Then I moved on to Honduras, to the capital, Tegucigalpa, and where my good friend Rene, Brother Rene, had invited me to come also. And I met and lived there with Johnny and Roca there in their house. I also was able to participate in their retreat for a week and met a lot of the Franciscans that way, their province. And then I was taken up into the mountains by 3 friars also, and stayed with them, and got acquainted with the work up in the mountains and the young people who were up there. It was great to go out to a mass 2 hours up into the mountains on a truck, and here was this church filled with teenagers and people with their Bibles during mass. It was a delight. It was a delight. I stayed with them and I saw where the first mass was celebrated in like 1498 there in Honduras, and after Columbus had made several trips in that area. I stayed with Johnny and Rene and Roca. We visited up in the mountains, and then while I was there, this woman, Berta Cáceres, was killed. She was assassinated early one morning. And so Rene and some of the other friars invited me to participate in demonstrations in terms of her life, and then trying to see why she was assassinated. Basically, she's a native there, and she was trying to protect the water rights of the people who lived there along this river. This company, an electric company, wanted to build a plant there and use 70% of the river water leaving only 30% for the native people. And that doesn't seem very fair. What are these people whose livelihood is farming and creating things? So we were there. We also celebrated during that time the Way of the Cross, and Renee and the sisters and others dedicated that to Berta Cáceres. And so these are some of the people that were there that I met who participated, Franciscans. And this wonderful young man who I had met sometime before that. He works at is participating in the university there, but having great problems. But he also on the weekends works. He goes out to the villages to work with the people there, to encourage them, to organize, to seek their rights. Happily, when we were leaving and are saying goodbye, he gave me this hat, which was his hat that he would wear up in the mountains. I'm very proud of it. It's a gift that's very simple but very meaningful. He said, "Here, I want you to have that as a remembrance of my work, of what I'm doing, and to pray for him." And I assured him of that. So I had a wonderful meeting with him and learned about what he was doing there in the university, where they're struggling to really have resources for his studies or other studies. He's studying mathematics, and I helped him to get a laptop, and so he was very, very happy about that, and a good friend of Renee. So during that time, we also celebrated Holy Week and the processions out in the streets. And again, this hat came in great for the sun, the hot sun on those days. This little boy was there in the parade and in the procession, waving his palm branches, but wearing a little t-shirt that said New Mexico Athletics. And I thought, well, that's worth $1 million. These are pictures of my visit up in the mountains with the priests, Father Carlos, Aníbal, and Andres, and some of the masses up there, and with the sisters there, and the youth. Tremendous times there. I also was able to go back to a little village and see some people there, some youth in El Salvador. And it made me think of all the youth, how enthused they are, and yet on the other side, how much they're threatening, living with threats of drugs and selling and drug cartels and things like that. After my month in Honduras, I traveled back to Guatemala for a Holy Week, Semana Santa. And this is a great week of celebration when they carry images of the saints. Sometimes 80 to 120 people, men and sometimes women, carry these images over carpets that the people have prepared out of colored sawdust. And so some of them that attracted my eye was of St. Francis and various colors along the way. The men dress in purple and carry these large images through the streets all during Holy Week, and especially Good Friday. Even little children carry incense, and many people carry incense in front of the image. But some of what they call carpets, these are all made of colored sawdust that are placed there in the street by the people and families, and done by little designs that are there. And they are spectacular. These are the molds that they use, and they lay on top of the sawdust to create these beautiful designs in the streets. What was a particular interest also in Guatemala, Antigua, was a painting of the 4 Franciscans that are priests that were martyred in the years before that in Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua. But the painting was with the people, with the bananas and the fruits and things like this, and some indication of these Franciscans. So there were 4 Franciscans. One is buried there in the church in St. Francis in Antigua. But there are many laymen and women and children who were also martyred. After that, I came back into Mexico, and I came to San Cristobal, and I went up into the mountains with some of the friars there to a project by Brother Andin, where he and others and another brother are attempting to help the people to try to reforest the mountain areas where they had cut into to create fields on the mountainsides. However, doing that and cutting away the trees has also changed the weather patterns so that the rain is not falling in that mountain area. So the project is to reforest these areas. And Adin, the year before, had received 20,000 small pine trees, sprouts, and distributed them to the people to sow and to reforest these areas, to educate and then to do it. And Adin is doing that along with a project buying some land, and I helped him to do that, so that he would they would be able to show the people how they might plant and have other crops that would be of benefit to their families. After that, I came back to the house of the immigrants and celebrated with the Franciscans the ordination of Brother Bernardo, and some of the young friars were there that day. That was a great celebration. And then I got back to Ismael, and there I met the Poor Clare sisters, a group of 12 sisters who were building a convent out in about a couple miles out of the town. They're going out each day from 11 o'clock till 2, working with rocks and everything and doing whatever they can. And these little sisters they sleep in hammocks in one room. They live a very simple, prayer-filled life, but they also are working, and I'm hoping to support them with that project of their convent that they are hoping to build as they are there. After that, I came to Palenque and also Merida, and because I wanted to see the Mayan ruins, and I saw some wonderful examples in both areas, pyramids that are unbelievable. It just took my eye away to see these magnificent Mayan ruins, and they say they've uncovered about 20% of them. I met a lot of people along the way, and many other pictures are here. But what was interesting also was the arts and crafts and things that I met along the way. In Guatemala, I was able to buy a stitchwork banner that a lady had made that I thought was attractive. They do some beautiful work like this, wall hangings, which are beautiful colors. They also, there's just lots of things there, but this kind of attracted my eye. I couldn't pass up a stole that one lady had made. I bought two of them, one for the priest that was ordained there, Father Bernardo, and for myself. The beautiful work that is done there is amazing. This was from the Shipibo women, and you can see the stitch work. Probably took a month for them to make that. This is their skirt that the women would wear in the jungle. There were other things that I met, of course, are maybe you are acquainted with the and this is indicating the rain. And of course, there's many other things there. In Peru, they decorate very finely these little gourds. And of course, coffee is very important. And there's a lot of competition about coffee. This is organic coffee that I bought there, or was given while I was there. There's many musical instruments that are used also. And this is one that I was very interested in. It was this is a bamboo, and it's a very beautiful instrument, along with marimbas and guitars and things like that. So the cultural visit also was very much a part of this visit and this pilgrimage of what I found along the way. And maybe just to conclude, this was a year of grace, a year of visiting many people and getting acquainted with many Franciscans. It was a year of grace, and it was a truly wonderful celebration of Franciscan life, but also the beautiful people who are there that we many times do not even think about or see. The immigrants also, and the people in the jungle, where I worked for 11 years. These people are hardly seen, and they work for about $5 a day, live on fish and rice. So I was able to visit with them again and raise my awareness of them. So in it all, it was a real gift of grace for this year, a real pilgrimage. It was a holy year, a jubilee year. Thank you.